I want to give you a short presentation about good design. In school we're really good at making quality products. I guess it's because we love making, but perhaps sometimes we feel that designing can be a bit of a chore. It really shouldn't be like that. We either rush our designing, but quite often just produce superficial work, not really relevant to our intentions. Getting inspiration from existing products, or even from a wider spectrum of sources like architecture, and combining these ideas to make your own design is good design. Directly copying or plastering your work with Nike ticks or Playboy bunny logos is poor design and unacceptable. The following presentation takes us through some aspects we need to focus on in our designing, with some interesting case studies. Know your target market. Who is your product going to be designed for? And what would they actually want in that product? Nintendo's development of their handheld game devices is an interesting one. Originally named Game Boy, with driving games, shoot-'em-up games and war games being the only ones available, Nintendo were making it clear that their target market was boys. This is where their development led. The Nintendo DS, which you're all familiar with. They've dropped the name Boy, so it's not Game Boy anymore, and they produce these products in a range of pastel colours, violet, pink. They also looked at what games girls would like. Cooking Mama, Nintendogs are all examples of these. So they doubled their target market, and they also doubled their profit. Form over function. Form is how something looks, function is how it works. You need to get the balance right between how something looks and how it works. This is the hot Berta kettle designed by Philippe Starck while working for the famous Italian design company Alessi. What do you think of it?
Craig, we're standing in front of the hot Berta kettle from 1990 by somebody whose name might be familiar to our public, Philippe Starck. Can you tell us a little about this?
Well, Starck is, the sort of rock star of design, and he really created the whole idea of the designer as a superstar. And what I think is so interesting with this object, it's an object by a company called Alessi in Italy, and Alessi started out making mostly stainless steel objects for hotels. And then in the 1980s, Alberto Alessi began to realize that he could take designer architects and begin to create high-end design that was accessible for the masses. This piece is, I think, so unusual because when you look at it, you see this sort of cone, which is a Starck motif that he used in lights and other things, but he's made it into a tea kettle. And so the cone part is aluminum, and you can put it on the eye of the stove. You would put the water in through this end, and this part, the little horizontal part, is plastic, so it's not hot when you lift it. And when it boils, you then pour the water out from this end. It's not the most practical object in the world, but it's certainly one of the most beautiful tea kettles ever done. I think it's one of the things about Starck when he works as an industrial designer is that he blurs that line between the functional object and the poetic object.
Okay, let's just go back and have a look at the design again. What do you think of it? Does it look nice? Do you think it would work well as a kettle? Philippe Starck got the balance wrong here. He was so interested in form that he forgot about function. The kettle was considered beautiful, but it was difficult to use, difficult to fill, and difficult to pour without burning yourself. Let's move on. Morals when designing. Are you making the right decision, considering all the factors, not just economics? Quite an extreme example of this was the Ford Pinto. The Ford Pinto was produced in the United States from 1971 to 1980. Controversy followed the Pinto when allegations were made that the Pinto's structural design allowed the fuel tank to rupture, and in all too common occasions resulting in deadly fires from spilled fuel. In other words, people were dying horrific deaths burning inside the car due to what would be considered minor shunts. So Ford's made a decision. Unfortunately, that decision wasn't to recall the cars and redesign the fuel tank. Ford allegedly were aware of the design flaw but refused to pay for a redesign and decided it would be cheaper to pay off possible lawsuits for resulting deaths. Design implications. Does your design actually influence anything else? Possibly something you haven't thought of. In the 70s, a motorbike manufacturer designed a twin headlight system. It seemed to be a really good design. When the bike went to market though, the fatality rate rose. At first it was attributed to people just riding the bike too quickly. It was then discovered that the twin headlight system fooled with car drivers' perspective. On coming up to a T-junction at night, a driver would see the lights and assume that it was a car in the distance and not a motorbike that was close up. The consequence of this was the car would pull out and the bike slamming into the side of it. Sustainable design. What is sustainability? Stop the video and discuss.
Sustainability means that things can keep going, can sustain themselves, can continue into the future and go on forever. From a human perspective, sustainability for our planet means that it can continue to do what it was designed to do: provide fresh air, clean water, produce food, and allow us all to have a high quality of life forever. Unsustainability means that it cannot, and that is where we are now. 20 years ago, scientists in Sweden developed a definition for sustainability with 4 basic principles. These can be seen as the care instructions for our planet. If we follow them, it is good for our planet. And because we're part of the system that is our planet, it's good for us too. The care instructions are as follows: reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and heavy metals, reduce our dependence on synthetic chemicals that persist in nature, reduce our destruction of nature, ensure we are not stopping people globally from meeting their needs. Demand for the Earth's services, clean air, water, food, increases as the population increases and living standards rise. But the Earth's ability to provide these services is declining because of the way we're living. In our search for prosperity, growth and success, we are destroying the system that we as humans are completely dependent upon: nature. We humans have become a threat to our own way of life. The Earth is a system and everything is connected: society, environment and economy. To live sustainably, we need to follow the 4 care instructions and apply them to everything we do at home and at work. If we can follow these care instructions, we can work together to be sustainable. We will all have a better quality of life. We'll waste less, we'll pollute less, and we'll create more things we value in society, while improving our planet's chances of providing us with the very things we need to survive.
So have you considered sustainability in your design work? Market research. Is there a need for the product? Your product will not sell without good market research. There's actually an exception to this. Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple and inventor of the iPhone, iPod and iPad, did not need to conduct market research. The guy was so far ahead of his time that he was inventing products that people didn't actually realise that they wanted. However, for us mere mortals, we need to conduct market research via the use of a questionnaire or surveys. Sir Clive Sinclair is a British inventor. He produced the first slimline pocket calculator. He then moved into home computers and pioneered this area, making products such as the ZX81 and ZX Spectrum computers. Your parents have probably owned one of these. He also invested £12 million in producing a product that he believed would be a massive success. This product was launched in January 1985. Production stopped in August of the same year. This is a TV advert for that particular product.
Imagine a vehicle that can drive you 5 miles for a penny. A vehicle that needs no petrol, just a battery. And that takes the press of a button to start, the squeeze of a lever to stop. That needs no license, no road tax, and you can drive whether you're 14 or 40. A vehicle that costs just £399. The Sinclair C5. It's a new power in personal transport. The Sinclair C5, £399. Want to buy one? Want to see one? Or simply want to read all about it? Just dial 100 and ask for free phone C5 now.
The C5 was a bit of a disaster, and it suffered from many problems. Cold weather shortened battery life, the driver was exposed to the weather, and because it was low to the ground, doubts were raised about its safety in traffic. In other words, people were just worried about getting squished by lorries. Okay, lastly, I want to talk about design specification. A list of requirements. This is something that you have to produce at the start of every project and is really important. At GCSE, not only is it important for your design, but it also carries marks, so the examiner is going to be looking for it. It therefore needs to be detailed, describing the product's requirements as well as reasons for those requirements. Split your design specification into 2 sections, essential and desirable. As an example, let's just have a look at a specification for a car. So if we look at things that are essential, I would suggest that perhaps wheels, steering wheel, engine, just 3 of many things that are essential to the product. In other words, it has to have these things in order to do its job. As well as that, you've got desirable things. So things like your CD player, roof rack perhaps, and paying that little bit extra to move up from fabric seats to leather seats. All very nice, but doesn't actually affect the working of the car. So your design specification is very, very important. Make sure your design specification for your project is detailed. Okay, that ends the presentation. Thanks very much for listening.